for a trial by combat to let God decide who is telling the truth. The advisors remind him that if he loses, Marguerite will suffer the consequences as well, but Jean trusts her story. Months later, the trial begins at the Palace of Justice. Jean formally accuses Jacques of the worst crime against his wife and leaves his glove as he asks to end this in combat if Jacques doesn't confess. Then the story goes back to the beginning to see Jacques' perspective. During that battle in 1386, when Jean rushes in to attack, the army doesn't immediately follow. After failing to warn Jean that they just were being baited, Jacques convinces the others to follow Jean in the name of the king. Later, Jacques does talk to Pierre about the rent as promised, defending Jean from Pierre's insults. Jacques thinks Jean is loyal and trustworthy, and Pierre warns him not to stay blind when the time comes. Since then, Jacques and Pierre become close friends. Pierre invites Jacques to all his dinner parties and even shares the women with him, and Pierre eventually trusts Jacques with his financial problems. Jacques accepts the job to threaten the lords until they pay up, and that's how he manages to get the estate of Anu La Fauconne from Robert before learning about Jean's engagement to Robert's daughter. Pierre still considers Robert a traitor, thus he sees this wedding as another point against Jean. When Jacques informs him that Jean is suing them both, Pierre just laughs and reminds Jacques he did warn him Jean never had good intentions. This is the moment Pierre chooses to give the captaincy to Jacques, and while he does point out it'll make Jean furious, he doesn't protest against the idea. The day Jacques receives the captaincy is the day of the celebration that Jean interrupts with furious yelling. Jacques tries to talk to him in private, but Jean ignores him and threatens with suing again, so Pierre dismisses him with humiliating words that have everyone laughing at Jean as he leaves. When the invitation to the firstborn party arrives, Pierre doesn't want to go, and he wants Jacques to stay as well. However, Jacques wants to go because he heard Jean is going and it's about time to close this wound. It's the least he can do considering Jacques was the godfather of Jean's late son, but Pierre still thinks he's too naive. At the party, Jacques sees Marguerite for the first time because Jean never lets her leave the house and he's impressed by her beauty. The kiss also leaves quite an impression, so later Jacques tries to